This is the Sociologist, where we talk about the sciences of what makes us human, what gives us soul. Today we're talking about resiliency scales and stress responses. How do we react when something in our day goes unplanned, when a stress is introduced to our life? These generally fall into the categories of fragile, resistant, resilient, and anti-fragile. We're also going to have some bonus ones that I found along the way. The analogies we're going to be using are structures of how we are and how they react once a stressor is introduced. The first and most reactive of the resilience models would be fragility. Stress is introduced and everything falls apart. It breaks the structure of you. This is a very reactive response and generally will be able to rebuild yourself to where you were. It will take time, it will take effort. The next scale of resilience would be resistance. When stress is introduced, it generally will still maintain the same shape. It's still box shaped. It was not broken. It can continue being box shaped. The structure is relatively unchanged. You might have to then some things out. It still will affect you. It still affects us, being resistant, not immune, but also not falling apart like the fragile model. The next stress response would be one of the more famous ones called resilience. Pops right back to where it was. Resilience is the ability to pop back right where you had started after a stress is introduced. You get to go about your day relatively unchanged. Now, some of the critiques of resilience as a virtue is that over time, it may lose its elasticity. The structure will have to put some effort into. If you take a wire metal hanger and bend it back and forth, eventually it will break. The fibers will have a toll taken on them. It also does take effort on the part of the structure, on you, to be able to bounce back. That is having not an equal and opposite reaction. You are taking it, you're putting it back to get nowhere better than where you had started. So resilience is the ability to go along your day, have a stress introduced, and continue to go about your day. Relatively unchanged, relatively unbothered, but still there's effort put into bouncing back. Another stress response is antifragility. So this is oobleck. It's a non-Newtonian liquid that becomes solid when introduced to an impact. It bounces when you're hard with it. It turns to liquid when you're soft with it. Antifragile is the ability to adapt to whatever input, whatever is changing in your day, and be able to not just take it and bounce back to where you were, but to come out of it better. Antifragility is highly adaptive. Antifragility can adapt to whatever kind of input, whatever kind of environments around it, and be able to not just maintain its shape, maintain your state of being during the day, but make it better. Antifragility is the only one of these where you come out on top, where you come out better than you had been going into once a stressor is introduced. One other stress response we can observe is complicity. Complicity is a stress being introduced and abiding with it. You want me to be flat? I'll stay flat. This is the opposite direction of antifragility, getting better once stress is introduced, and this is kowtowing to the stress itself, letting it not just affect your day, but change the way that you will go about it. This is flat, it'll stay flat. A final additional stress response I would like to address would be resourcefulness. Being able to use all of the other stress responses depending on the input, depending on the stress, depending on the context, your role in the situation. Maybe at family, Christmas, Thanksgiving dinner, you don't necessarily want to give the most resistance and you let other stuff slide just for the sake and the goal of a successful communal meal and get together, stuff like that. So you do give in to a little bit of the complicity when you need that. In intimate relationships, maybe your feelings do get hurt, and so it does change you. You want to address that, you want to acknowledge it, because it does take something from you. In the workplace, we need to be a little resilient because we need to keep going to the next task at hand. We need to take whatever kind of stressors, whatever kind of unplanned events might happen in the workday, and continue to perform in the same capacity. Somebody attacks you in public, whether online or in person. A lot of times, anti-fragile manner is the way to address that. Stop it before it escalates, before something turns into physical, social, verbal violence. Being able to use any and all of the different stress responses, depending on our goals, depending on our roles, depending on the context of the day. When we learn that alchemy, to be able to flow in between all of them, that is true mastery of our own stress. All of these different tools and models can help with our own self-discovery, with our own self-awareness of what kind of reactions do we have in our work life, with our intimate partners, with family, out in public, online. All of these different things, we might notice certain patterns with how we react, which ones we are drawn to, which ones we want to be towards. Now, stressors can be any kind of internal or external stimulant, whether those are situational, whether those are chronic. Things like depression, that is a chronic stressor that we might have in the background that we're going to have to find a way to react to and overcome. Anxiety is something many of us may experience on a case-by-case basis or on a much more grandiose in the background at all times kind of area, that we can use some of these tools, some of these responses to respond to our own anxiety. Anger, any kind of regular emotions like that. When we have anger, how do we react to it? Do we succumb to it? Do we resist it? Do we continue on our day as normal in a very stoic manner? Or do we embrace it and purposely try to subvert our own emotions? So these stressors, these stimuli can be things external in our lives, and stressors can come from within as well for us to use all of these stress responses.